Toys R Us was every kid's dream, until it vanished. Picture this, a sprawling wonderland of action figures, Barbie dolls, and video games, aisles bursting with color and possibility. For decades, it was the place where childhood fantasies came to life. But in 2017, this retail giant with over 800 stores and a mascot, Jeffrey the giraffe, that was practically family, filed for bankruptcy. By 2018, its doors were shuttered, its shelves empty. So, what happened? How did a company that defined nostalgia for millions crash and burn so spectacularly? Was it crushed by Amazon's rise, drowned in a sea of debt? Or did it simply fail to keep up with a world that was changing faster than it could adapt? Stick with me, because this is a story of big dreams, bigger mistakes, and lessons that hit harder than a kid losing their favorite toy. Let's rewind to the 1940s. Charles Lazarus, a young entrepreneur, starts a baby furniture store in Washington, D.C. World War II had just ended, and the baby boom was kicking into high gear. Parents were desperate for cribs, strollers, and bassinets. Lazarus saw opportunity, but he wasn't just selling furniture. He was selling hope to a generation building families. By the 1950s, he noticed something. Parents kept asking for toys. Not just any toys, but the kind that sparked joy in their kids' eyes. So Lazarus pivoted, opening the first Toys R Us store in 1957. It wasn't a warehouse yet, just a modest shop, but it was the seed of something massive. Why did toys become his focus? Because he knew emotions drive sales, and nothing tugs at heartstrings like a child's smile. Fast forward to the 1980s and 1990s. Toys R Us is a juggernaut. Picture those iconic stores, cavernous, with towering shelves and that unmistakable smell of plastic and possibility. They weren't just stores, they were destinations. Kids begged to go, dragging their parents down aisles of Nerf guns and Lego sets. The company went public in 1978, and by the 1990s, it was raking in billions. At its peak, Toys R Us had a 20% share of the US toy market. That's 1 in every 5 toys sold. They even had exclusive deals with brands like Nintendo and Hasbro, making them the place to get the hottest new releases. But here's a question to keep you hooked. If they were so unstoppable, what was the first crack in their armor? Stay tuned, because it's not what you think. Let's talk about the magic for a second. If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, you probably have a Toys R Us memory burned into your brain. Maybe it was racing to the video game section to drool over a Super Nintendo or clutching a birthday gift card like it was a golden ticket. For me, it was the time my mom took me to pick out a Power Rangers action figure. Red Ranger, obviously. That store felt like a portal to another world. And I know I'm not alone. So, what's your favorite Toys R Us memory? Drop it in the comments below, because I bet it'll hit us all right in the nostalgia. But even giants can stumble. By the early 2000s, Toys R Us was facing headwinds. First, there was competition. Walmart and Target were expanding, offering toys at cutthroat prices. These weren't specialty stores. They sold everything from groceries to TVs, and toys were just one aisle. But their scale meant they could undercut Toys R Us on price. A Barbie that cost $20 at Toys R Us might be $15 at Walmart. For budget-conscious parents, that was a no-brainer. But was price the real killer? Or was something bigger looming on the horizon? Hold that thought, because we're about to dive into the deal that changed everything. In 2005, Toys R Us was taken private in a $6.6 billion leveraged buyout by KKR, Bain Capital, and Vornado Realty Trust. Sounds fancy, right? Here's what it means. These private equity firms bought the company, but they didn't pay for it all up front. Instead, they loaded Toys R Us with debt, $5.3 billion of it. The idea was simple. Streamline the business, make it leaner, and flip it for a profit. But here's the catch. Toys R Us was now on the hook for massive interest payments, nearly $400 million a year. That's money that could have gone to updating stores, improving customer experience, or, here's a big one, building a killer online platform. Instead, it was funneled to banks. This debt was like an anchor, dragging the company down. But could they have survived it if they'd played their cards right? Let's find out. While Toys R Us was grappling with debt, a new player was rewriting the rules of retail: Amazon. By the mid-2000s, Amazon wasn't just a bookstore anymore. It was a marketplace for everything, including toys. Parents could browse thousands of products from their couch, read reviews, and have a Lego set delivered in 2 days. Toys R Us, meanwhile, was stuck in the 1990s. Their website was clunky, their e-commerce strategy was barely existent, and they relied on foot traffic in an era when people were shopping with their thumbs. Amazon's prices were often lower too, thanks to their razor-thin margins and scale. In 2006, Toys R Us sued Amazon, claiming they violated an exclusivity deal. They won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. Breaking ties with Amazon didn't make Toys R Us stronger. It left them without a real online strategy at the worst possible time. Let's pause for another open loop. If Toys R Us had built a robust online store in the early 2000s, could they have fended off Amazon? Or was the retail apocalypse inevitable? Keep watching because the answer might surprise you. By the 2010s, the cracks were widening. Toys R Us stores were starting to feel dated. Shelves were messy, displays were uninspiring, and the magic was fading. Customers complained about poor service and out-of-stock items. Meanwhile, Amazon was using data to predict what customers wanted before they even knew it. Toys R Us was still guessing. And then there was the debt. Always the debt. By 2017, the company was drowning in it, with $5 billion still on the books. Interest payments were eating up profits, and there was little left to invest in innovation. They tried to modernize, launching a new website and even experimenting with pop-up stores, but it was too little, too late. The final blow came in 2017. Toys R Us filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, hoping to restructure and survive. But the numbers were brutal. $5 billion in debt, declining sales, and a holiday season that underperformed. Creditors lost faith, and by March 2018, the company announced it would liquidate its US stores. Over 800 locations closed. More than 30,000 employees lost their jobs. Jeffrey the Giraffe, that cheerful mascot, became a symbol of a bygone era. Walking through an empty Toys R Us during those final days was like visiting a ghost town. Aisles once filled with laughter, now silent. But was it all doom and gloom? Here's another question to keep you hooked. Could Toys R Us have avoided this fate? Or were they doomed the moment that buyout happened? We're almost at the answer, so don't click away. Let's break down the lessons. First, debt can be a death sentence. The 2005 buyout saddled Toys R Us with an impossible burden. That $400 million in annual interest payments? It was like trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of bricks. Second, adaptation is non-negotiable. Toys R Us underestimated e-commerce and overestimated the power of nostalgia. They thought their brand was bulletproof, but no one's loyal to a store that feels outdated. Third, competition is relentless. Amazon didn't just beat Toys R Us. They redefined how people shop. Walmart and Target played their part too, proving that convenience and price often trump sentimentality. Yet, there's a flicker of hope. In 2021, Toys R Us announced a comeback, partnering with Macy's to open shop-in-shops and relaunch their online store. By 2023, they were testing flagship stores, like one at the American Dream Mall in New Jersey. It's not the empire of old, but it's a start. The question is, can they recapture the magic in a world dominated by Amazon? That's a story still being written. So, what's the big takeaway? Toys R Us didn't just fail. They failed to evolve. They bet on nostalgia when they should have bet on innovation. Their story is a warning to every business: adapt or die. And for us, it's a reminder that even the biggest dreams can crumble if you don't keep up with the times. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the tragic downfall of Toys R Us. If you loved this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more business stories that hit you right in the feels. And don't forget to share your Toys R Us memory in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Until next time, keep hustling.